I am unashamed. What about you?
So it's our second half of Ladies' Day on the Unashamed podcast. Since Phil is off doing a eulogy today for ZZ Top's funeral, which is kind of weird, but at the same time, he was very humbled by it, which I think is really cool. I mean, he only met him that one time. And
that was a couple times, I think.
Maybe so.
We interacted. Yeah.
Maybe so. And
just throughout the show. Because
right.
we were at some event together. I remember that. Yeah.
But obviously, Dad must have had a big impact on him, and I'm sure, Dad talks about spiritual stuff to everybody. So, but anyway, so.
I was in on the conversations with him. It was funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny that we're in two totally different worlds. The beards brought us together. And I think the spiritual conversation, they enjoyed it.
They liked it, yeah.
When I first heard that they asked him to speak, I thought, well, I know what he's going to speak about.
Yep.
I just thought, what a cool way to introduce Jesus to a whole new audience.
That's
so
exactly
I know he's going to do that.
Oh, yeah, because and so did he or his wife or whoever had the idea to have him. I mean, they know Dad,
right.
So they know that. So we got Missy and Lisa. Our fair brides back on today because we got, I don't know if I told you guys, but we had a huge response the last time you guys were on.
The highest rated show of all time. I wasn't sure if it was y'all or they just like to watch me squirm.
I think that was part of it. And that's why I've been wanting to do it again. So I was so excited when Missy sent me a note and said that she was, I've already said I've always liked to see Jay squirm.
Babe, gosh, here we go again. Really?
So I was like, just the chance to see it again is worth having Missy and Jase.
Jase doesn't like it though when anybody else is the center of attention and it's not him.
Here we go. Let's just start throwing haymakers.
So if his beautiful wife is on here, he's not the center of attention.
It must be this chair, Jase, because first is Dad, then it was Mom, and the last podcast now Lisa is the Jase under the bus seat.
I completely disagree with that statement whatsoever. I just want to be left alone.
That's true. That's a true statement.
Well, what I love about it is because Jase obviously tells a lot of stories on the podcast. And so he'll tell us stories about different interactions y'all have or some argument or all this. Of course, we're only getting his side of it.
Yes, I know that.
I can't remember every little detail. I fill in the blanks.
So you just lean the stories towards your favor every time.
That's right.
Look who my mom and dad are.
That's very true.
They're like, they explained to me one time when I brought up the fact that I didn't think this story had happened that way. And my mom and dad both said, these things are based on true stories. They put that in my brain. They said, you ever seen a movie that says based on?
Yeah, they fill it in for dramatic purposes. That's what you do.
I would say that's about every Robertson story is based on true.
That's right. You also got to think about you were trained as a preacher.
Yeah.
So you and Al, preachers always tend to embellish just a little.
Well, we have a license for it.
And it was actually quite a miserable experience for me. I'm glad I did it because there was some benefits. I learned the Bible. I got confidence, but I was just with a bunch of nerds for 2 years.
Jase doesn't look back as fondly on our school years.
Those were not easy years. Those were not easy classes, and that was hard.
I became known as the preaching student who had the most visits to the dean for various infractions.
Mainly for sleeping.
I just never could figure out that. Well, that was one of the great qualities I learned there is how to sleep with your eyes open. And I'm proud of that. But most of the stuff I got called in for was a violation of the rules. And I was like, I thought we were here to learn about grace. You've come up with a rule system. Remember, it was they had a dress code. And I'm like, I'm opposed to that for biblical reasons.
Dress code, no tobacco products.
But how many years were those rules in effect? You think you were going to roll up in there at like 19, 20 years old and change all those rules?
Yes.
That's exactly what I thought.
That's exactly what I thought, and I was passionate about it. But guess what? It was a band of one.
Yes.
My own brother would not follow me. He was like, hey, I don't know what happened to him. I heard this story about mom dropping him as a kid, and I went with it.
I had to create some distance because he was pulling me down. I wasn't part of the resistance. I mean, I was with him in spirit, but in actuality, no.
Yeah. Well, when we were dating and then, the story of them coming coming and down here and recruiting y'all and all that. And I was like, no, because I grew up with a dad as a preacher. Yeah. And I said,
"Oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
I'm not marrying a preacher. Like that's not happening.
Yeah.
It's years of no money, and I mean,
you take a vow of poverty that you didn't know you took. Yeah,
it was not fun for me. As thinking as like I don't want the rest of my life to be the same thing.
Babe, you're such a gold digger.
I am. I know. I have been labeled that for sure.
Well, if she was, she wouldn't have married you.
That's exactly
there
right.
There wasn't a lot of gold to be digging around here.
Yeah.
No, so that's true. When you think about that, like, what was my alternative in with you to do?
Missy has been a treasure hunter long before you were.
She was we have laid awake staring at the ceiling many a night. I'm like, how did you know? How did you know that this guy duck calls, go around, TV show, lots of money?
It was all God.
We've established on the podcast, Missy, that starting with me, then to Jase, and then to Willie, we were all rejected by the asking for the daughter's hand in marriage. We were all told no. In fact, I didn't even ask because I knew what the answer would be.
You just went and snuck off and did it.
I just said, we're doing it next week. Yeah. Deal with it. So I was, not as nice as they were, but but they knew somehow. They knew somehow it all worked. It was the ruggedness, I guess.
Well, and now who besides me, who is your biggest fan in life? Would you say?
Your dad.
My dad.
Oh. I missed that setup.
He is Jase's biggest fan.
I'm not sure. I don't have a lot of fans, babe.
A lot of our fans just talk about Jase interrupts dad too much. Although I find that funny, Jase, that you get thrown under the bus because no one interrupts more and more viciously than dad.
Yeah.
Wow. Literally the other day we were on here and I'm telling a story and he just, it's like I wasn't even talking.
Yeah.
He just takes out. And then me and Jase and Gary Glenn got so tickled because he didn't even realize he did it. Had no idea.
Al told a 5-minute story why he's called Alan Jones, which I know he's called Alan Jones, but I never knew why.
So Jase was really intrigued by the story.
I was on the edge of my seat. And Al said, the reason that I was called, the reason that happened, because he had this altercation with a police officer. The reason I've been known for Alan Jones all these years, and he was fixed to say it, and Phil said, by the way, if you look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and it was a great sermon 7 minutes later that Phil preached, had nothing to do with Alan Jones. It was like the gospel's the point of the Bible.
And we were laughing so hard for the first 4 minutes of the story. But we're trying to hide it because, with dad, if he notices you're laughing at him and he doesn't know why, then he'll just say, what is it? What's so funny?
Yeah.
Then he gets
call
offended.
You out.
Well, he was actually given the point of the Bible.
But he was so into his own study, he wasn't listening to you.
No, he wasn't.
He doesn't know your story. He still doesn't know your story of Alan Jones.
No, the whole time.
He didn't hear it.
That's exactly right. Because the whole time I was talking, I caught him out of the corner of my eye. I'm talking, but he's looking, searching his thing. He's hearing wah, 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 wah. That's what he was hearing.
But see, I'm not like that. A lot of times when we were in school, they would call me in. They would say, "You don't look like you're paying attention in class." I said, "But I am."
But you weren't. You were asleep. You've already said that with your eyes open.
When I was asleep, I was not paying attention. You're right. But several times I would stick my head down on my desk.
Yes.
And I was listening. I was just listening comfortably.
Jase, there comes a time when you just have to say you're lying about that.
No, I would listen. I passed. How can you
Thanks
pass
to me.
if you're not listening?
Because your older brother
and Missy. I give her credit. You typed up all of his papers and stuff.
Yes.
You typed every single
letter.
Thing.
Everything.
I couldn't type.
And look, you don't realize people have no idea. And not to just, back in my day, but like prison school was really hard. I mean, we had 2 years of study, but you went to school every day.
10 months, and it was 8 hours a day.
So they figured it up. If you compare that to college hours, we would have gotten over 200 hours of university level. That's how much time we're in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And you're writing papers for every one of those classes. So, I mean, I was either in class or studying or writing papers the whole time for 2 years.
Well, they wouldn't allow you to have a job while you were there.
And yet I snuck out and worked. I broke the rules of that
remember,
too.
I cut firewood.
I worked you know what I did, Jase? I worked in Bill Phillips's dad's convenience store at night down on Washington Street in Balkanville. That's what I was doing to pick up a few extra bucks. Plus we started preaching, you know, so we could make a little money. Did y'all?
He preached for what? Sometimes about what, $100 a week? We'd get that from the little country churches.
We'd go through that in about 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, the gas to get to these little country churches.
We drove all the way to Olla, which is an hour
that's what
south.
we
I did it
too.
long enough to know that Missy's dream came true. I wasn't going to be a preacher.
This is not our dream job.
in
So
an
would
established
y'all were dating,
organization.
so you would go with him, right?
But we got married the week after y'all graduated.
Yeah.
And so then it was just like, now what?
Right.
Now we got to do this for an actual living.
And then they interned us, you know, which meant we got about what I guess we were getting for support, maybe a little bump, but it
You
wasn't
got
much.
$800 a month. $800
Well,
a month.
what was fascinating is they came and recruited me after all this trouble I'd caused, and I was shocked. And I remember, you know, Carl kept saying, "But you got potential." Yeah, he kept saying that. I'm like, just believe in me, not my potential, because that's
What I got
saying
right now.
you don't like me right now, but you have potential. But it didn't work out. But I think everybody has to figure out God's purpose for them directly, and I did, which was build duck calls and do other things, and then use that as a platform to share Jesus. Because I really was happy that I learned the ins and outs of the Bible, and it brought me some discipline in my life. So, I mean, I'm thankful for it, but I'm like, no, thank you, working for an established group, because I'm too much of a troublemaker. I can't get along with that organization.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I've talked about it before, working for the church is really difficult because, I mean, it is just there's a political edge to it. There's so much going on. And the bigger the church, the more in the fishbowl you are.
Yeah, I didn't like any. I worked as an intern long enough to say this is not for me.
So I think we're all grateful now that we can volunteer and you're not tied to a paycheck. Ministry is a lot more interesting and enjoyable, I should say, you know, which we got the blessing to be able to do that. It's funny you think about, you're right, Missy, you live on $800 a month and you're like, man, now you look at it, that's like a light bill. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and we were living off the whole, that was the whole enchilada.
Well, that was several times, you know, in our marriage. I was literally walking down. We had one vehicle there.
We did too for a period.
Yeah, and it just, you know, when you're walking down the side of the road, you're like, I need to do something with myself.
I was hoping he would get to that point.
Yeah,
Get there. Gotta get there.
saved my money and bought a truck for $1,000,
Yeah.
and it pretty well was worth $1,000.
Yeah.
Well, it was funny because you weren't too crazy either about being a preacher's wife, of course, and I wound up, you know, going into it full board. So why did you not think it was a good idea?
I think I did not. What I considered to be a preacher's wife was a meek,
Mild, soft-spoken,
Not you, not
submissive.
quiet, submissive woman. And I was none of those things. And I think also, at that point in my life, whenever you decided to do that, I didn't know that. I don't really think that I believed that God could take away my sin.
Yeah.
That He could see me as a new creature, or that anybody else could see me, you know, as a new person in Christ. So I think I allowed Satan to, you know, tell me that it wasn't possible, that I wasn't preacher wife material. You know,
So you always
you've
felt,
done too much. You know, you can't be forgiven of all
you didn't
this
feel
stuff.
like you belonged in the club, right?
No.
And you looked at women we were around at that time was, you know, Margaret Smith and Barbara Allison, and I mean, ladies, we
Great
obviously loved,
women.
But then you're just
Yeah.
like, how could I ever compare with these people?
And Missy's mom,
Yeah,
you know,
and
Peggy,
Peggy, right.
you know, she was. So yeah, I didn't feel worthy of the calling.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting as we kind of share that time in our life, all four of us, that, you know, how God can take us at such a young, immature age with our immature thoughts of why we don't want to be a part of something, do it anyway, and then bless us along the way to where now that's all I want to do is talk about Jesus to people and try to convince them to see who he is and try to fall in love with him and let him lead you. And so before it was just like, oh, I don't want to do. I mean, I love God, but I don't want to do that.
Right.
I don't want to put myself out there,
Yeah, 'cause you keep
especially
looking-
for no money.
It's all perspective. So let's take our first break. So I should have asked Mom on the last podcast about Dad's underwear because, we're always saying.
Glad you didn't. That was
Well, because he said, I asked, I said, Dad, how do you get your underwear? He says, I have no idea. They just show up in a drawer.
yeah.
And Mom has been buying them all these years. I'm trying to get him to try. He says he hasn't gotten a pair, but I've given him some Tommy John underwear. You got some,
Yeah.
and you can
Awesome.
agree they are
Yeah,
awesome underwear.
they're good.
The best you can ever have. They've had over 15 million pairs sold across America. So that shows you that other people love them as well. But they've got a best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. So if you don't love them, you can send them back. I don't know what they'll do with them, but you can do that. But you will love them. Trust me. They say they're a high end for your rear end, which is a pretty good ad, I guess. So check these guys out. You get 20% off your first order when you go to TommyJohn.com/Phil. So go to TommyJohn.com/Phil and see their site for details. So since we're there, I want to ask you both about this because I observed something in both of y'all's life and where we are now. So you guys were in Austin for a while. We've got a place down in Gulf Shores, and you both got super involved in your community, literally your neighborhood community in spiritual ways to help people. So describe that a little bit, both of you, kind of how that came to be and how different that was from us being here our whole lives and obviously connected to the church. I mean, we've done ministry, whether we were paid to do it or not, but it's a different feeling in it when you go into this new area where you don't know people and yet you get to know them and the opportunities. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, for me, we went for a reason to help Mia with school and being close to her family, her cousins. And so I found myself with a lot of time on my hands, and I'm not used to that. And after, binging Netflix and all that, when she'd go to school, I thought, this is not what I want to do. I know I'm here for her and try to help her, but I got to do something too. And I think we can all say for most of our lives that we've been very active in ministry of some sort. And it almost always involves people in our home. So, of course, Jessica was right around the corner from me, which was great. And then I met, I have a friend that lives about 10 minutes away that had invited me to one of her child's birthday parties. So then I got to meet a couple other women there. And we started talking. And my friend, Jenna, said, have you thought about maybe starting a ladies' Bible study? And I thought, yeah, to quote Phil. And
Hey, we had a Phil impersonation. That's pretty good, man.
It's good.
So,
man. Give that a 9.5.
That was really
out of
good.
10.
but my thought was, I don't want to go in and just start pushing myself on people. I don't want to, it's just not really my personality. I want Jesus to lead the way. And I had already been praying about what to do. And so she said, you can bring Jessica and I can bring my friend Jackie. It's like, this is a great idea. Yes. So I called Jase that night and super excited about it. Like, what should I do? He said, I would start with John. You don't know where these women are coming from spiritually.
The book of John.
The book of John.
Yeah.
Start with the book of John. And I have always been involved in Bible studies that either I created or would go to where it was prepared. So whether you watch a video or you read a book or you just sit and listen to someone ask you questions that you have the answers to or, et cetera. And I thought, I think we should just read. Let's just read a couple of chapters a week and discuss, which was kind of nerve-wracking for me because when they came to the house, I had nothing written on a piece of paper, and that's not like me.
Right.
So I was like, let's just read it. What did you get out of that? And that Bible study turned into an amazing experience, not just for those women, but for me.
Yeah.
And when we finished that book of John, it was around the holidays, and we said, let's just keep going. Let's just go into Acts. And so I will say that every week, every Tuesday night at 6:30, those women were at my house. I was the only one without little kids. So mine was like just kind of a more peaceful place.
Yeah.
And every Tuesday night, we ended up growing closer to each other and growing closer to Jesus and understanding what he's about.
Right.
And I honestly fell more in love with Jesus during this last year of this quietness that I had, this what do? I have time on my hands. I think God used that peacefulness, that quietness, even that loneliness sometimes to grow me.
Right.
And then to also impact others. And so right before we left Austin, we had a community event that these women and I discussed and said, let's just share what we've learned with the community of Austin. So we rented out one of the theaters there close by in our neighborhood and invited South Austin. And we had a number of women show up and tears and prayers. And it was
You were there
amazing.
too, Jase, right? Yeah, because Jase told us about it, talked a little bit about it on the podcast.
Yeah, wow.
How
She
great it
was, yeah. And I was there a whole lot because I had responsibilities here.
Yep.
But because a lot of people, you would think, I told this story before, but I remember telling a guy, I think it was on the golf course, that I had a house in Austin, but I was here, my wife's there, and he's like, well, I'm so sorry, I'm like, well, no, and I kept trying to explain. I get it, I thought, oh, well, because you would think that would never work. Of course, we were doing it for our daughter too, and we have Jeff and Jessica there, but we're busy.
Somebody sent a Facebook message to Lisa because we're similar and said, or did you and Al split up?
Oh, yeah.
We're like, no, we're good.
But I did the same thing. I mean, I was supporting Missy, in her venture. And like when I would come down a few times, she would have their husbands come. And so we would do an event together.
Right.
But, we've just learned, I think, since we're not preachers, like in an organization, I mean, I base my ministry on the book of John, how Jesus interacted with people. He would always go out where they were and have these conversations that seem small, but then it develops into a bigger conversation and then sparks. Or, I think about that woman at the well. She wound up being the spokesman for the whole town. And it all started from just one conversation. And I think you did that in Austin through those women. And we try to do that just in our normal lives. I always think about that obscure passage that Jesus said over and over and over that said, he who has ears, let him hear, which nobody ever talks about what that means. But it's like he was just talking about whoever it is, wherever you are.
Right.
And my opening line in all my speeches is, I know I look like a preacher, but I'm actually a believer. They laugh because I don't look like a preacher, but I do think God has chosen us in this way to be real, and not just on Sunday. These are house gatherings and just talking about Jesus. So that's basically what we do together.
Well, also, it's not just about Jesus, because you want to come to Jesus and you want people to come to Jesus, but why does Jesus want us? He loves us, he created us, and he wants us to be together as a community and as a family of believers. And so that's also what happened during those months in my living room and on my back porch is we became a Jesus community. And these women are going to be friends for the rest of my life. I mean, they're amazing. We still talk every week for sure. We have a group text message. We're checking on each other. And I forget that. I forget all of that. During Duck Dynasty, things have changed because of Duck Dynasty, and people's perception of us have changed because of that. But these women, they didn't care about all that.
Yep.
And I love that because they love me for who I am, flaws and all. We talked about mistakes and flaws and failures, and they're there. And I'm like, that's exactly what Jesus created us to do and to be together. Right. And I found that in Austin. Now that we're not going to be back, I'm really missing them. That was the best part of the whole move was finding them.
You have to start a new one in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, babe, I think that's kind of, our experience was similar because like you said, when you work for the church, and especially if you're the main person, the main guy, then people bring people to you. I mean, that's what happens. Problems, marital problems. And then, we've been open about our struggles. But in this case, we went in and nobody knew who we were either. I mean, they found out who we were connected to. But so we were meeting them. We were just walking around our neighborhood And in our neighborhoods, about half of it is sort of semi-retirees and, people. And so everybody's out working in their yard and everybody stops and talks to one another. So that's how you meet people. And we just started walking around and meeting people. And it was amazing just because, again, conversations seasoned with grace and salt, how much they picked up on there's something different about these. I mean, like they knew immediately there was something different about us. And then it didn't take long before those began to bear fruit in terms of a lot of deeper conversations, people sharing their hearts and stuff like that. I mean, what has been your, Daniel, let's take a break.
Missy offered to cut my hair the other night, and it turned into a point of conflict.
Why am I not surprised?
She's like, I don't think I have the skills. And I said, no one will notice.
Well, you told the story recently about hanging by your hair in a thicket. So,
that happened.
I know.
I thought I wasn't going to make it.
Well, one of our long-term sponsors, keeps.com, when people are going to them, they're not having the hanging in the thicket hair problem like you are, Jase. But a lot of guys have male pattern baldness issues, and we understand that. And so this company has come up with a way to treat that. And so they help you keep what hair you have. So if you're beginning to lose it, you need to get a hold of these guys. Go to their website. They're going to ask you some questions and take care of you. So the way you want to check them out is go to keeps.com/door for 50% off your first order of hair loss treatments. That's Keeps, KEEPS.com/door. And check them out and save your hair.
They found out who we were. So then, that kind of went around the neighborhood. But what I think most is once they found out that you were a preacher, then it was like, oh, well, can you start a church here? We really haven't found a place that we wanted to settle in.
A lot of them had bad church experiences too,
Yeah. So can you just start a church here? And we're like, Al's like, no, I have a church in West Monroe.
I'm working I'm working myself to death free for a church already.
So how we started out was we just started having different ones into our home to have dinner with us and to have conversation. And we would give them all a copy of our book. Yep. And when we lived in the condo, we had a little couple that was in the condo area with us. So when we decided to move, they decided to move with us. So they moved right next door to us.
And they were next door to us in the condo.
Yeah.
And we had talked to both of them, but we were just kind of beginning. It's not like we were, instant best friends, but we liked each other. Yeah. And they were like, we don't want to stay here if y'all want to be here. So they bought a house next to us in the neighborhood.
And Mike and Malia now are very special to us. Yeah. Malia is she has done everything in her life. I say, when I grow up, I want to be like you, Malia. But she's just she's a genuine person, and she loves us, and so does her family. But whenever you meet somebody, you never know what their struggle is, because everybody has one. Mm-hmm. And so when you get to talking to somebody, you learn what their struggle is. Sometimes you've been through that struggle. Sometimes you haven't. But I think as Christians, God always gives us the answer. No matter if you've been through it or not, He always gives you the answer to tell someone as to, maybe not how to fix it, but how to overcome it. Yeah. And how to rise above it. And so that's kind of what you and I have been doing as far as the having people in. And, our first time that we had a couple in, we had two couples in. And, halfway through our meal, one of them, just started crying, sharing stuff about things going on. So,
and what got me was she felt safe enough the first time we had her in our home to share with us some of the really tough stuff she's been dealing with this last year. And I thought, man, what a humbling thing that someone's willing to share something that deep. Even though we'd known them and talked to them around the neighborhood, we had never really had a deep conversation. And the minute we went there, she felt safe enough. And she said, we and her husband was there, we haven't told anybody this, not even our families. But here's some of the things we've been struggling with. So I felt like that was a humbling opportunity. And I thought, God has us here for that purpose. Like you said, I mean, it's a time of difficulty because it's hard to be apart when we're apart, but then at the same time, God can do so much, with the time that you have together.
I had one thing that Jase and I both spoke separately at a little church in Austin when we were there.
Oh,
And
that was
one
fun.
of-
Yeah, I forgot about
One
that.
of the things that I said, sometimes you have your speech prepared or, we kind of ad lib a lot when we speak. But one thing I said, and I heard myself say it and had to say it again, was I said, the reason that I'm here may not be the reason that I'm supposed to be here. And I was like, let me think about that again. The reason that I'm here may not be the reason that I was supposed to be here, because the reason we came was different from, I feel like, the reason that God used me and the way that God used me. So we might have our will and our desire and our plan, but then let's be open and make sure that God is leading us the whole way, because he will most likely have something way bigger in mind for us.
Right.
And that's what happened with us in Austin.
Well, it's like when Missy said that about not having any notes or anything written on the paper. You're in your house. It's not maybe a Monday night or a Wednesday night. I do the same thing in my speeches, because I've always been kind of shy about speaking, which, I was confident when I went to the school. They helped me with confidence. But I don't use notes because I view it the same way she does, is I'm just trying to introduce the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And when y'all were talking, y'all's speech is incredible when y'all do a marriage seminar or whatever, because you're vulnerable and open. And I think that's why people do show up at your house and just start, unveiling all these secrets. But it reminds me of that Colossians 3. At the end, he talked about, at the first he starts talking about set your mind on things above where the Lord is. And he gets to the end, he talks about all the relationships, how husbands and wives and children and parents and social classes. And then he's like, whatever you do, you work at it with all your heart as to the Lord, not for men. And really, that's what we're trying to do. I mean, when you think about our show, our little duck show that came out, people they thought they were drawn to us because we were having fun and doing all these crazy things, but it was really to the Lord in us.
That's right.
On how we get along. And that's when they hear us speak, that's what we do. And we're doing the same thing, maybe with our new show, which Missy's going to be a part of today. Are you nervous about that?
No.
Okay.
Which is kind of interesting, Missy, because I didn't know that you and Jessica were going to be do anything with it.
We didn't either.
Yeah, I think this is evolving because I didn't know about Sai either.
Yeah.
But but it's. I want to get your take on it, because really, you are the reason that Jase even got into treasure hunt. Because if you hadn't
Am I supposed to take this responsibility? I'm not ready for this.
Babe, you made which I told you about posting things on social media.
Wait. What are y'all attributing this to?
This all got started over that one post. I was down in the yard, and you didn't say, "Hey, babe, I'm fixing to take a picture of you in a vulnerable position."
Oh, the one where
really
you're digging in the front yard at the plantation? That one?
Yeah.
Well, that was my point, was that you wanted to redo the plantation, and y'all bought it into a bed and breakfast.
Right.
But if you hadn't had that desire, you wouldn't have opened up the opportunity for him to ever get into treasure, because that's really what started, right? You thought, I'm going to be out here, and I don't want to be doing bed and breakfast, so I need something to do.
Well, I got out there, and she was like, there's an old house out here in Logtown where no one lives anymore.
That's true. No one's there. It's not a town anymore.
No.
It's literally surrounded by fields.
Yeah.
200 years ago. And this old place is out there. Missy's like, because she likes to take old, rough-looking things and refine it.
Right.
Which is why she married me.
I knew that was coming. I could smell that one.
You still got some work to do there, Missy. I guess this is a lifelong project.
She's just in denial about her gold digger tendencies.
Oh, gosh.
And
now she's got you digging
Yeah.
for gold.
Yeah,
You're actually
out
who's the
here.
gold digger, really?
she's out there, and I'm out there with a hole dug, and I'm looking. Well, she was driving by on her way out, and she took a picture of me and put on social media, he's always hunting something.
Well, that's true.
It was true. It was genius. And that one picture launched where now this has become real. There are cameras back in the yard.
Yep.
Here, let's go find something. But every time camera crews show up, they can't help it. because they look over there and they're like, "Oh, that's your wife," like you didn't know it.
Right.
I mean, but they just can't help it. They gotta dig into
Take another
how
step.
did this happen?
Yeah.
It's a miracle. She's a gold digger or whatever. And then they want to interview her and say, well, how did Jase get started in
There
this?
you go.
They can't help it. They just gotta
Next
pick
thing
it
you
up.
know, they're going to keep going. Let's take another break. So Missy may have been the initiator, but then Unashamed Nation is now the ones that, because we asked,
Yeah.
Jase asked him, he was like, do we do this or not? Because
Yeah.
if you say no, if you say this is a bad idea, we're not
Well, I
doing
mean, think about it. Do you want to follow somebody around and watch them beep, beep, beep? I mean, how interesting is that? So I was like, I mean, a show about that? I don't know about that.
But
I mean,
they
I don't know
do.
about-
They just
I get it, but
they
babe,
followed
look,
around me for 4 days.
Here's the reason.
Literally.
Look, here's the reason. They're not following around you because of your beeping machine. They're following around you because you're enigmatic on TV.
Oh,
Just like
that's a
you
big
are
word.
here. It's the same thing.
So
Like
look
for
that
the
word.
Look
for the podcast.
What did you
Go
just
to-
call me?
enigmatic. I know what it means. Let's let Jase go
Oh,
to
gosh.
Google.
Okay.
Google it.
I mean, if you want to call me a name, wait till we get home. Depending on the definition.
Look it up, babe. What's it say?
I would agree. He's
Difficult to interpret or understand, mysterious.
There you go. They want to try to
Mysterious
figure you
is the
out.
one
That's it.
she
They
was-
still do not
that's a
have
great
you
word.
figured
He
out.
took the money with an enigmatic smile.
There you go.
Hey, you're so mysterious. I'm
They're
not sure
trying
if
to,
that was a
they've been trying to
compliment.
figure out Jason's dynasty.
They want to
Missy is
figure
right.
it out. So with Jeff, I think it's going to be great because I told actually one of the producers, I said, this is gold because Jase, you never know what you're going to get. Jeff is laid back, but super funny. Jeff is super funny.
He is
I have
funny.
to admit, those 4 days of filming, Jeff did a lot of really stuff that made me laugh. And I thought it was just because I hadn't seen him in a while.
Well, as a
But-
brother, you know, and we're all close in different ways. We all have different relationships with each other. But I mean, that was actually one of my favorite aspects of the idea of the show was because Jason and Jeff have gotten close over doing this together
Yeah.
because they never were that close.
Well, I
mean,
got him involved.
I'm close to Jeff
Yeah.
because I'm like a uncle almost, like a dad, because you know we've helped him and worked with him and
Yeah.
stuff like
Well,
that.
I got Drew into this because of Murray, who has become one of my best friends, but he was going through cancer and he was a metal detector and I knew nothing about it. And he taught me everything I know, but I was trying to help a friend out because he was like, that's the only thing keeping me alive. He actually said that.
Wow.
Then he's like, can I come hunt your yard? Well, what am I going to say? He just said it was the only thing keeping him alive.
He's pretty smart.
No, I
too.
hope you die.
Yeah.
You know?
I was like, boy, that's quite a line there, Murray. Yeah, come on over and find this old junk in my yard. But then he started finding cool stuff. And the more, look, I went to the Bible and studied how many times it talks about God finding us as lost. And the reason
And
Jesus
treasure, yeah.
hung out with the riffraff, and there's so much about treasure and where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. And I thought, you know what? I mean, this may sound coy, but I thought if there's that much in there about the Bible and how it
Yeah.
relates, I'm going to go give this a try.
But like that's an analogy because God and Jesus are using those stories as an analogy to what the real treasure is. And so that's why when we started talking about how to do this, I was like, it's got to be, for a lack of a better word, deeper than just finding the treasure in the ground.
Right.
Like, let's find out what the treasure is there because somebody made it for a certain purpose hundreds of years ago or whatever. And then let's see, what does the people, what were they doing during that time and how were they living? What were their relationships like and what was going on here? And then to maybe be able to flesh that out a little bit and try to get those relationships to be honored and that time in history to be honored for the good.
Right.
Without ignoring the bad, because
Right.
there's some bad history we all know. But what's a way that we can do that? And I love that. That's why I love the place that we bought because it was built in 1847 by hand. So you're digging in the yard, and I'm looking at the hand sawn boards and everything that's going on inside the house because I think those are beautiful. And I want to see what was going on here. I would love to know what was going on here. What was the family doing? And so I think that both of those aspects on a show are going to be amazing.
Well, and I was very encouraging to Jase about it, because one of the things the struggles was, and Zach and I talked a lot about it, was, you know, people are trying to erase history now. We don't want to talk about history. But I was just the opposite. I said, well, we need a show like, we need to let's make history great again. You know, I mean, let's talk about it honestly and openly, but let's not try to destroy our past. You know? That's how we learn.
And I'm
going
to use the bad things in the past, because we've already found some things that you're like, oh, what do you say about that? You know, I found a bullet, you know, from the Civil War. And I just said, because honestly, when I see that, my first thought is, I believe all people are valuable. I mean, it's a reminder to me to look at things through a spiritual lens. What's crazy about this is, while we were talking, Jep just sent me this picture, because I guess they're filming out at our house. Are they? Mm-hmm. He said, hey, I just found this in your yard. So I'm not sure what that is.
It's like a finial or something from the bedpost.
It was like some piece of fern. Oh, and I don't know how I could have missed that, because I've hunted my yard 100 times.
Well, we said a little change in the earth. You never know what happened. A little rain,
That's pretty awesome, though. Because that's probably
it makes
handmade.
me mad, because I thought I was expert, and Jep, look, has become known
Here's another element of the show. The old green-eyed monsters.
I'm going to tell you this. I mean, Jep has become the newbie of the show, and look, not by design. He just, because wherever he goes, he finds junk and nothing of value. So I'm shocked that he's actually found something that's cool.
One man's junk's another man's treasure.
That's exactly right. We got to see that in interview.
That's right.
Let's take our last break. So in this last segment, there's a couple things I wanted to talk about. One is, you guys are going to be, Jases mentioned, you guys are going to be grandparents, which is super exciting.
We're fixing to talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to talk about that.
They are the grandest things that you will ever have.
I agree.
Grandkids are the grandest.
I'm
They are the
excited
best.
about that. It's a little weird to deal with being old. So,
No, you just embrace it.
This is what I'm looking forward to in growing old, is having the grandkids, for sure.
So our oldest granddaughter is here. Carly's watching today, and she's 15. And so I had to tell you, the first one, this will be your oldest, will pretty much set the pace for everybody going forward, because they get that first. Depending on how many years there are in between them, they'll call you the first thing. And so, have y'all thought about
your name?
Have you thought about what you want to be called? Because I think it's, it may not happen.
We've had a few suggestions. Like,
how about Rock?
I would what?
Call me Rock.
Rock.
I'll be a rock.
Papa Rock?
No, just rock.
As in dumbass?
Alan, gosh.
I thought I was the only one that said stuff like that.
Well, where did that come from?
Rock. Like,
hey, Rock.
Now look, this is not going to work. If you ask
Carly's rolling over here.
If you ask my opinion what I want to be called, I gave it, and then you just destroy. I'm saying, what do you want to be called? That was the first thing that popped in my head.
The Rock.
The Rock.
Like the
Rock.
Rock.
No, Rock.
There's already The Rock has The Rock. I'm just Rock.
So what is your name?
Would you be Roll?
What do you want? Yeah, what do you?
Well, do you want to hear my explanation?
Hey, here's my grandparents. Rock and roll.
Will you let my? I think that's awesome.
That's pretty good.
Rock and roll.
It used to be sex,
I was
according to
saying
Alton Howard. So
that
there you
the
go.
kid will need some kind of sustainability in their life, and I'm offering to try to be a rock to
I
this
think
kid.
that they'll be laughed at school. I don't think that is very.
What are you talking about? They're only
my granddad Rock. You have a granddad? You have a Rock for a granddad?
Yes,
he's so solid.
Yeah. That's it.
Oh God.
That's it.
Oh God.
I didn't know this was going to be such a shock for you, but there
Really?
you go. All right, well, what do
So
you
what did you
suggest?
have in mind?
I
Missy?
mean, I didn't have anything in
I'm
mind,
sure you weren't
but
thinking
maybe I
Rock,
should be really prepared for this, because I don't like the way this is going. Reed and Brighton they're like, we don't know what do you want to be called? So I don't know.
So what do you?
I suggest Rock until I hear a better idea.
Well,
You can be Roll. I like that.
why don't we ask the Unashamed
Unashamed
Nation what
Unashamed
they
Nation.
think?
Well, we need your suggestions.
Yeah.
So, I'll be honest. I don't think Memaw and Pepaw are going to fly.
So what do your kids call?
Oh,
your
that's
parents?
what y'all talking about. You want a version of that? Yeah, that everybody does that.
What?
Jase wants to be unique, is what he's saying.
I want to be unique because I don't want to be in a restaurant or somebody say "mama" and like 8 women turn around.
Neither do I, but I don't.
So
If they say rock,
Okay,
you're
so
the
wait,
only
what
one.
are y'all? What are y'all called? What are y'all called?
We're ma'am and pap.
Ma'am. That's right, ma'am and Pat.
And Pat.
Well,
And I don't know that we didn't come up. Did we come up with that?
That came from Swiss Family Robinson.
oh,
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Who is
know there was-
It was a show.
Don't ask about any kind of wholesome show on TV. He doesn't know anything about that.
Are you
Gravy.
implying
Jase,
that
you
I-
are not that much younger than me.
You
are
never
you implying
watched.
that I only watch unwholesome shows?
No, but that's all that was on back then. You didn't watch TV at all, so
Thank you
don't bring
for that
up all of
clarification.
that. Yeah,
Don't bring up a wholesome show. He knows nothing about that. I'm like,
You only
what?
watch this trash.
I didn't watch anything.
that's
If it didn't
true.
come from Josie Wales or one of those, is what she meant.
I don't know,
Yeah.
Al.
We only had 3
I-
channels.
So what do they
I'm
call
just,
your
well,
parents?
I'm just going to say one comment about your name because I worked at the woman's clinic for 12 years, and I don't think I could affectionately call anyone Pap.
As long as you leave the smear off,
Well,
we're all
here's
good.
what you should have done. When they called you ma'am, they should have just called you sir.
Oh, yeah.
Ma'am and sir.
Ma'am and sir.
That's respectful.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Rock, roll.
No,
It's not that
no.
bad.
Ma'am and
No.
Mister.
Ma'am and Mister. That's
No.
right. So what do they call? What do your kids call your parents?
Mimi and Poppy.
Mimi and Poppy. Okay, there's a Poppy, and they,
Yeah.
it's Mamo K and
Did I
Papa
not- did I
Phil.
not
Mama
know
K and
that?
Papa Phil.
Mimi and Poppy.
Yes, you did know that.
Oh, good
my
Lord.
Hopefully you knew that. Good night. Your kids are.
I'm not
Your
a
kids
big
are grown.
name. Let's come up with give everybody a name. Is this what people do?
Yes,
Yeah.
otherwise they're going to call you Jase.
You asked, I gave you mine. I'm sticking to
Yeah.
it till I
All right, so Unashamed Nation sends
What about Rock and Pearl?
love it.
Rock and Pearl. I like that.
She's a pearl and you're a rock.
Yeah, that's kind of treasury.
And a metal detector.
Metal
Babe,
detector.
embrace this time of your life.
So it's Al at restorationproductions.net. Send me your suggestions. and
Oh, boy.
We'll talk
I
about
can't
it.
wait
on
to
we
the-
see
also
these.
still need a name for the show, and Missy said quit worrying about it. People will come up with it, but
And we got a lot of names that
We did,
were very
but-
creative and interesting, but they were
they looked into them. They were either copyrighted or
Yeah.
they didn't like them.
Yeah.
or they don't like if they say it's too on the nose, like they don't like that, like it's catchy or whatever. They're like,
I
oh, no.
tried last podcast because I thought that name I came up with was awesome, but no one likes it but me.
What was that?
What
Oh
was
no!
it?
Oh,
Dirt
no.
bags.
No, yeah, no, that's not. That's not.
What
No.
about treasure
Dirt bags
trove?
meet rock. You know,
Well, I thought it should be a depiction of us.
You're a dirt
Yeah.
bag.
that's what Dad said.
Yes.
Dad said the exact same thing.
Because before
Dirtbag.
I came to Jesus, I'm technically a dirtbag. Since I learned metal detecting from Jesus, I'm like, he turns the dirtbag into a new creation. Also, a second meaning to that is we dig in the dirt and we're looking for bags of gold.
No, this is the subtitle under the show. What he just said.
Yeah, so much for the
It's like
catchy
an
title.
essay.
Yeah.
And I want people of the world who are not believers to watch. So I think they would be more willing to watch something called Dirtbag than Holy Rollers.
Well, who said naming it Holy
Holy
Rollers?
I'm just using it for an illustration.
Rock and rollers, yeah. All right, so we only got a couple of minutes left, Missy. But you and I talked about this, so I want to mention it. Last month was Cleft and Craniofacial Awareness Month. So give us a little update on Mia Moo, kind of how
Okay.
things are going.
I
always
would
like to let the
love
audience
to.
know about
This has really grown over the past year, even through the pandemic and all. It's been quite shocking. So thank you everyone for donating and for buying the products and all of that, because we have been able to help with when we send our next check, it's going to go over $500,000 is what we've been able to help families with
that. Awesome.
since we started. And we're having our Mia Moo Fun Day this October. We couldn't do it last year because of the coronavirus, but the families were just really asking, please, they need it so bad.
Yeah.
They need that camaraderie, that encouragement. They need other people to face with them, understanding what they go through every day.
Yeah.
So we're doing that this October. So please, I'm asking people, I'm not ashamed, go to miamoo.org, because it really is changing the way that this is being perceived. that it's not just a once and you're done kind of surgery situation. And then, of course, we've learned now with the 17-year-old, about to be 18-year-old daughter who was born with this, that there's so many emotional factors that go through.
Right.
They go through, especially a girl. But we want to be there for those families emotionally. And so that's what really this fun day is about. It's expensive. We pay for their hotel. We pay for their food. We pay for all the activities that we do. But this is a place where they can come here in West Monroe, and we can just love on them.
Yeah.
And make them feel like you don't have to think about your cleft this time, because everybody here is just like you.
Yeah.
And you don't stick out. You're not different. And we've had 2 so far, and I was nervous about this, but I wanted to try it. Was a time where just the parents were able to share. So the kids are out playing, had some activities with some people who were, we had nurses there, everything in case something happened. So we said, let's just all the adults get together in the living room and discuss some things. And I was nervous about it, but it ended up being their favorite thing that they had the entire weekend, was that 1 hour of just the adults sharing together.
Yeah.
Tears and laughter, and we got into medical care personnel. And I mean, it was just like, that time and it was like you bond over all
well,
those
we had talked
experiences.
about earlier, community. This is a community.
Yes.
It's its own community.
Yes.
So a lot of people have prayed for me. We talked a lot about Jase, especially going through the surgery within this past year. So they ask about her all the time. So how's she doing physically?
Physically, she's doing great. She hasn't gotten all of her feeling back in her chin. So some of those nerves are the last to heal. Yeah. And that was such a major surgery that she's still, every once in a while I'll say, you've got something on your bottom lip. She's like, I can't feel it. She'll wipe it off. But it's slow. It's a slow process because this was such an intensive surgery. But she's doing fabulous. She's doing wonderful, wonderfully well.
I know a lot of you
physically.
ask, and because I see a lot of emails, and of course our staff and crew do a good job of letting you guys know. But it's always good to hear from you because they're asking, how that goes. So, that's great. So now you know how to look at that. If you want to help out, we would love for you to be able to do that as well. We're out of time. That went by fast. That was fun. It's always good to have the ladies on. I was saying this with Mom and Aunt Amber on our female audience is really growing, because I'm getting about as many emails now from ladies as I am from men. So we appreciate you guys, and I know you really like it when you hear the women's perspective, especially since we tell all the stories.
We got to come. Me and Kay's got to come back on and talk about our book.
We're going to do that. They have a new book coming out, so I'm excited about that. So we'll next time, Ladies' Day, we'll talk about Sister Roar.
Well, we may write a book about being grandparents when that happens. We're going to call it Rock and Roll.
Oh, God. Here we go.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.